Bingo Blitz rules.
If your bingo has ads in it,
That's not a bingo.
if it doesn't have the coolest tournaments, mini games, and the most breathtaking design,
Nope, not a bingo.
if your bingo moment makes you feel so excited that you just want to burst in joy and scream out loud, bingo! Sorry, so you're playing...
Bingo Blitz? Now that's a bingo. Go for a world of excitement with Bingo Blitz, the #1 free bingo game. Download Bingo Blitz and play for free.
Now that's a bingo.
Streaming December 12th on Peacock. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie are back
That's hot. Loves it.
for a show-stopping reunion that will prove putting on an opera is anything but simple.
We're really good at this.
One thing's for sure, they won't be upstaged.
Good to have you back. Come on, we've got a show to do.
Paris and Nicole, The Encore, a 3-part reunion special, streaming December 12th, only on Peacock.
Let's hang out. Let's hang out. And let's talk about what lesbians have found. Let's hang out. And let's listen to two lesbians shout. Let's hang out. Let's hang out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Hang Out, the podcast that wants to make you feel like you're not the only queer in the world.
I'm like, I want to go, but I can't keep going. Even though sometimes you might be the only queer in your world, let's be real. But
Sometimes.
here, you are not the only queer in the world.
Never with us.
No.
From the West Coast, I'm Lee Holmes Foster.
And from the East Coast, I'm Ellie Brigida. To those of you who have been with us through this whole journey, thank you as always for listening. If you're a new listener, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Here's what's happening this week.
This week in the Lesdom.
This Week in the Lesdom is a place where we can touch base each episode about things going on with the podcast or otherwise. We want to let you know about all of our events that are happening. Coming up, we're still rolling with all the virtual events. So our first event coming up is May 8th. We are doing a karaoke night. We want to see you there. We want to see you singing. Or if you don't want to sing, just come hang out in the audience. We had a blast with all the people who were swaying in their little Zoom squares.
People got real creative with their lighters for some songs. It was great. We also, on May 10th, so Klexicon is trying to bring us some virtual programming, and we are super excited. We're going to be doing one of the panels that we had been planning to do in person at Klexicon. It is called Shut Up and Take My Money. We're pumped for it. So
Yes.
we're going to have some queer creators from all sorts of different media on to talk about how fans and consumers of their work can best help support queer creators, and especially indie queer creators who are out there. I think it was, certainly important to us when we were planning for Klexicon originally. It's even more important now, knowing how many, indie creators are just really struggling through, everything happening financially and economically right now. So that's going to be on May 10th from 12 to 1 Pacific time, which is 3 to 4 Eastern time, and various other times in between those two throughout the rest of the country. We are going to be there. We're going to have some cool guests, and we would love to see all of you there.
I'm pretty positive it's free. All you have to do is register. We will make sure we have those links up on all of our social media so you can get registered and come hang out with us. Also on May 14th, we are so excited. We are hosting our first Buffy virtual trivia night.
This is going to be bonkers.
7 seasons, all kinds of questions. We're not sure the difficulty level of them because Lee knows Buffy so well that everything that comes out of her head as a question seems easy to her. So
it's a struggle. That's all I'm saying. I've seen the show a lot, okay?
So we need all of you hardcore Buffy fans to show up. And we promise we will also, I will double check the questions. I have seen Buffy twice. So I feel like that's like a good control group. I'll be able to help gauge if they're easy or not.
Ellie's like our placebo group. It's
Yes,
fine.
yes.
Great.
But coming out with us May 14th, we're going to have an East Coast and a West Coast time slot. Come hang out. And in the greater Les universe, if anyone has been on bisexual Twitter,
it's on fire right now.
It is on fire. We just wanted to talk about the bi flag. There was a tweet or a Twitter account for BiNet that basically claimed copyright over the bisexual flag. A lot of bisexual copyright lawyers came back and said, no, you don't own the flag. And it's all ablaze. It is all ablaze.
It's been a day over on the Twitters right now.
Yes.
So we just want to say, look, bi folk, we love you. We support you using that flag all over the place.
Yep.
With impunity. Go nuts. And please, please, please don't let anybody tell you that they own it or your identity. Ever, ever for any reason. Okay, great.
Great. This has been an episode of Let's Hang Out Court. That settled.
In even somehow more depressing news, wow, our this week is not good this
Not
week.
good. I'm sorry.
So we also want to say, I'm sure everyone has sort of seen at this point that prides are mostly being canceled everywhere, at least in-person events like the parades, the festivals, everything's kind of canceled. So I absolutely know there are so many different people and creators and organizations that are working to bring us content and community and ways to connect throughout Pride Month. We will absolutely be doing the same. I mean, we've been doing our best through all of this to continue bringing events and community and things for people to do and connect with other queer people. So keep eyes out for that. I know, this sucks.
When I found out that Boston Pride was canceled, I literally went into mourning. Like, I had a day where I was
Ellie's in all black right now.
I was so
Veil, everything.
I was so depressed. I really was. Like, it's something that we look forward to all year. So I just want to say, like, if you're sad, I'm also sad. Like, we're all very sad, but we're going to be sad together. And then we're going to pick ourselves up and we are going to do as much as we can to still keep Pride going, because nothing can cancel Pride. In-person prides can be canceled, but they cannot cancel our pride in our hearts.
That's the spirit.
That's the spirit. That's what's happening this week. Back to you, Ellie and Lee.
Thanks, Ellie and Lee. We are so excited to be bringing you episode 15 of season 3, Only Queer in the Room.
And we're thrilled to have an expert here to help us dive into this topic. We're joined today by Jennifer Browm, a leading diversity and inclusion expert, dynamic keynote speaker, best-selling author, award-winning entrepreneur, and host of the Will to Change podcast, which uncovers true stories of diversity and inclusion. Thank you for hanging out with us,
thank
Jennifer.
Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you. I'm so psyched to be here. You're awesome.
It was the Rihanna intro that did it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
If you
sold.
start with Rihanna, that's,
Everything
you
works
can't only
better.
go down from there. But
Indeed.
So after that illustrious intro that Ellie gave, I mean,
I'm
the
blushing.
better question is, what don't you do? But tell us a little bit just about how you kind of landed where you are now. Like, how did you get started with all of this? Because we know the secrets. You have like a unique past, I guess. A unique path for how you got here.
It's a little surprising. And that's actually really typical for people that do what I do. There literally is no recipe. We kind of make it up as we go along. And then all of a sudden, poof, you're a diversity consultant. My career kind of started in nonprofits in my 20s. And I was in community service and all that. And I was singing on the side. So I'm an artist and a musician. And I was sort of very high level amateur, I suppose, right? I was singing with the Boston Symphony. I was a studio vocalist. I was teaching voice, like everything I could do. And then
That's what you're still calling amateur?
I know,
Oh,
I
man.
know.
I don't know what I call it.
Not making any
Hi.
money. I know, it's a weird field. Even when you're making money, you're starving, or it's.
I write gay
True.
songs for a podcast. Where does that rank me?
Yeah,
on
I think
you're a high-level
low-level
amateur.
amateur.
Lee.
right,
Okay.
amateur, for sure. And so I actually moved to New York to study opera. I finally bit the bullet, and I was like, I gotta go where it's happening. And I moved to New York knowing no one, and I started a master's degree in voice, and I just was so thrilled, just felt so lucky. But then I had voice surgery because I kept injuring my voice through the course of training, which is really tough, obviously. I just didn't have a very strong instrument. No matter how much I tried and wanted it badly, it just wasn't going to cooperate. And so I left about that behind, and there are tons. Obviously, New York is full of performers who have failed and had to reinvent, and that was me. And so I had some friends who said, you love the stage. Why don't you become a trainer, like a corporate trainer? And I was like, well, what is that? And I ended up kind of morphing into being somebody who was on a stage of sorts, I suppose. It's like the classroom in the workplace, right? Teaching what we call soft skills, meaning like presentation skills and business writing and business etiquette and all this like ridiculous stuff. But I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It was definitely the performer in me. it was very much like the change agent in me, I guess, like the person who really wants to make the world better when I realized how broken so much of the workplace was. And as an LGBT person, of course, I'd been closeted as a performer for sure. I mean, I was out to my friends, but I think that every performer lives in fear of going in front of a casting director and having them actually know who you are versus wanting to cast you as like the young love interest or the little sister or the young bride. And I didn't love that on lots of levels, actually. But I was terrified, and I thought my career would be over, and I didn't see anybody that I thought shared my story or my identity. Like, even if we were there, we didn't talk about it. And then I was pivoting before I quit. I was in music theater. I mean, and that's also kind of what used to be anyway, like brutal in terms of sort of heteronormative roles. Then I became a corporate trainer. I started my own company. I had some HR jobs in there. And then I got my own LLC, put my name on the door. I got certified as a woman-owned company and also a LGBT-owned company. And I don't know if your listenership know that's a thing, but it is. And that kind of enabled me to feel a lot more confidence about being out as a business owner. But it would still be a really long time, I think, before I could kind of stand in a room and come out like over and over again, particularly when it was room full of like what appeared to me to be white, straight, cisgender men, executives. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying on multiple levels and really uncomfortable. And, you never know how people are going to react. And you kind of just lose people's attention. And I think for me, too, I can pass through the world as a heterosexual person. So that's really interesting too, to kind of, always be coming out and making that choice and thinking about the impact and the consequences. I don't know if that's a privilege or not. I wouldn't call it that, but it's just something that I've been like acutely aware of. So now I try to be as out as I can be. And I try to be out all the time because to me, not having had role models, I'm like, it doesn't matter how I feel today. Like I need to be here so someone can see if they see themselves in me, or I give them a little confidence this day to like bring more of their full selves to their job or whatever. Like that's my work, really.
Yes. I know you talk about this a lot in your book about like bringing your full self to work. And I wonder like, cause I don't feel like I bring my full self to this job, obviously. But like,
wait, Ellie, are you gay?
What? No. What? But like, I don't know, like other things like I go into preschools and I sing to kids and like I'm singing to kids in preschools and I don't tell those kids in preschool that I'm gay. And sometimes like there's like sort of a different line there. It's like, okay, well, do I need to tell them here? But
I'm waiting for the day you show up for those lessons in your Les shirt.
I know, right?
I told you this. I had a stressed nightmare one time that I showed up to preschool in my Les Hangout sweatshirt. And I like tried to take it off and change into my like Jammin' With You outfit, and I like couldn't take it off.
Oh my god!
Hiding it from the kids, like it was literally a stress dream. But I mean, I think a lot of people feel like, even like myself, who obviously is like screaming from the rooftops on social media and everywhere. In certain situations, you do feel like it's a part of yourself that you have to hide. How do you navigate like being 100% yourself in every situation that you're in, and also like, why do you think that is such a positive thing for the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that everybody, what we call covers, which means, not necessarily denying who we are, right? Maybe you're out, but you don't talk about it, right? Or maybe, some people know and some other people don't. Like a lot of people are very incremental about it. And it all depends on your manager. I'm sure you can all think about your bosses that you've had. Some understand and some don't. Some companies are supportive and some are not, right? You could have a supportive manager and a not supportive organization and boss. It takes so many different forms. And I think, if I still struggle with it and I'm, been at this, I've been out for like 25 years. I'm dating myself, but I came out when I was 22. And if I sit there and still wonder, how is this going to impact my credibility, my ability to be believed and taken seriously and have the gravitas and the power that I need to do what I do? I know that, what's the statistic? 50% of us are still closeted in the workplace. So, look that statistic up on hrc.org, like know the facts, because we are masters of disguise in this community. And we're still kind of constructing these elaborate lies or sort of just kind of leaving it conveniently out, which is, I think much more, perhaps more common. And we do that, so for survival. I mean, there's no judgment. I think we do it because we sense, rightly or wrongly, and I want to point out, often wrongly, that others are not going to get it, support us, learn from our stories, right? So I think we deprive others of the learning opportunity by playing small and minimizing and downplaying. Like we sort of skip over that opportunity to really be like pleasantly surprised. And I think we all as gay people like have stories like this, right? When we were terrified for years, and then it's like one conversation and it's done, and it's just this giant relief, right? So we still do this to ourselves, and I think we internalize like the playing small really has an impact on our confidence, right? And how we embody who we are, and I think it impacts our productivity. It's distracting. It's demeaning in a way. So it doesn't, I think, send a good message to our hearts and minds, that I'm somehow less than, and therefore I'm going to incrementally share and sanitize what people see about me or experience. I don't think it's healthy for us to do this. So anyway, I think most of the time these days, there are, and I don't want to generalize, but, good things could surprise you if we were more authentic. And I think we've got a whole army of people now that are like, Jennifer, I want to do more. I want to be a more inclusive leader. I want to know your story. There's more of, at least in my environments, there's a lot of questions now. Like people are like, oh, what does pronouns mean? Like, what is that? How do I share my pronouns, and why should I do that?
What is a pronoun?
What
You're
is a
like,
pronoun?
you know what a pronoun is.
What if it's grammatically incorrect? Like, oh, I love that. Yeah.
But it is funny though, because it's like, there's Ellie's experience, I think, of, when you're in certain situations where like it doesn't feel as appropriate and stuff. Right. And then I'm thinking of like, for me on the flip side, I'm like, I show up in my homonormative shirt at the office like every other week or whatever, and it's like, and they, all my coworkers know about the podcast. Like, there's no secrets of what my sexuality is, or whether I am interested or willing to talk about it.
But I think there's like generational differences between us, right? Mm-hmm. So, obviously.
For sure.
I mean, I have to point it out, though, right? I think we've got to be really patient with other generations and understand, like, what it was like. Those old habits and memories really die hard for a lot of us. Yeah. I still meet people who are retiring in 2 years and have, like, lived the lie their whole careers at a company. And they're like, why come out now? I'm, like, 2 years away from retirement. I was like, really? Yeah. It's amazing.
No, and it's funny, like, because I do, in my particular office of my company, there's only a dozen of us in San Francisco. And I am the only lesbian in my office. I know I'm not in my company. And it's funny sometimes to navigate those generational distances where I'm like, I make absolutely no secret about this. Wow. And like, maybe you are in some ways, but like, also look at you. I'm like, I've definitely had those moments with some of my coworkers in like other parts of the company where I'm like, do you think other people don't know? Or like, I don't understand. Like, this is interesting because it's, it's not.
But it's that unspoken thing.
Open, like it doesn't come out in conversation.
That's covering, right? That's that kind of minimizing.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so that to me, it's been really interesting because as someone, for me, actually going back to when I was in grad school and I was teaching, like TAing classes and stuff and having primarily classes of like 18, 19-year-old students. And a lot of them, it was almost always first-year students. They're away from home for the first time. They're away from their parents for the first time. A lot of them exploring parts of themselves that they maybe haven't before. And so it was always really important to me to be like, there's no secret. There is no shame. There is no nothing. Like, I am not going to hide anything. And I want every one of my students to be aware that it's like, this is me. I'm super, super gay and very, very happy. And like, my life is fine and everything is cool. And like, and especially at the time, it was like going through all of the, like, I'm engaged, I'm getting married. Like, I wanted that to be visible for my students specifically. And I know that there are kids for whom it had a huge effect or a huge importance in their lives, or like their comfort with.
They show up to class the next day and they're also in a vest. They cut their hair the exact same.
I definitely had more than one time where I'd like, make some offhand comment in class and then have like a girl on her way out at the end of class that day kind of like lean over and be like, here's me also outing myself, you know, like kind of
so cute.
like kind of off to the side, and I'm like, I see you.
I knew, but
It's
thanks
cool.
for telling
it's
me.
Cool.
That's lovely. We didn't have that
and
at all.
it was it's so sweet, you know, but I think that like that then transitioned into like entering a regular job at a regular old company of like, I don't want to have to do anything else, you know? Like, what's the point? What's the point of going to work every day and feeling like I can't talk to people about who I really am or what's actually going on in my life? And if that's going to be an issue, like, I'd rather know from day one, you know? Like, if you can't handle me during an interview mentioning my wife, then, like, I don't want to work here.
I love your attitude. I wish more people would say that. But, you know, to have,
What
so
would
you
be
can
the
have
point?
I think the privilege of being able to say that, we've got to acknowledge our
there's a huge amount of
socioeconomic,
privilege in it.
It's like,
Absolutely.
we can pick and choose, you know, and that's, we are so fortunate. But
But it's also with the knowledge that I have that privilege. Like, realistically, I have a good background, I have a good degree, I have skills that will be valuable to companies. Like, I'm not worried that I wouldn't be able to find another job if I ever had to. And so I feel like, you know, having that security, I feel like I have to be out, right? Like,
yeah,
how could you not?
Agreed.
Because so many people can't, and that's the truth of it is like, I know that there's a lot of people who still can't do that, you know,
Right.
or for whom it is not safe to do
That's
that, or who
right.
have to hide for other reasons from their family or from, you know. So it feels like it would be such a waste of like the opportunity to be like blatantly in your face gay at my office every day to do anything
less
else,
than that.
you know.
Yeah. Do you remember when like Tim Cook came out, CEO of Apple? You know, the interesting thing
Yeah.
is he wasn't out; he was covering. I mean, I think it was known, but it wasn't talked about. And then I think the story goes anyway that employees were just pressuring him and were like, you know, this is just sending the wrong message, and we don't think that this message is good for employees or good for the world. You know, and the usual excuses of, well, I'm a private person, you know, this doesn't really matter to the business, you know, it's all those excuses. And finally he relented, you know, but you talk about doing that from a place of privilege, you know, that's like the ultimate example. But I also thought it was interesting because, you know, many of us, I think, still do, in certain generations, don't think this has to do with our leadership. Like, it doesn't have to do with, like, why would I talk about this, you know, in the workplace? And, you know, but we can sit here on this call and say, how could you possibly not bring your full self to work, like, and still expect yourself to do your best work? You know, how can you sort of leave so much of yourself at the door and expect to be present and creative and a great colleague and, you know, build trust with people when you're sort of doing that with your hands tied behind your back because you're not really talking about like half of yourself, you know? So it is very interesting that how his process of coming out more publicly. And I use that a lot with leaders who I'm trying to get to kind of share their diversity stories and be more vulnerable and be wholer, more full people. Particularly the straight white cisgender male leaders who tend to dominate industry. I'm like, you know, it's funny, the courage that LGBTQ people have is so, it has so shaped us and made us into awesome human beings.
True.
Into like really courageous people.
Scientific fact.
Yes, fact. That is absolute, not fake news. We are, you know, but we're very courageous. We have gone through the process, I think, and the deep fear of losing everything we have and those that we love in order to be true to ourselves. Like, there kind of is no darker night of the soul, you know, than to imagine what we're putting on the line. And that, I think, is profound. I mean, I know it has changed me. It has shaped me. It has made me resourceful and emotionally intelligent and flexible, like, to so many degrees that I don't know if I natively would have been. But it originated in terms of needing the resilience for survival, but it actually has made me so much of a better leader. And when you kind of flip it that way and don't look at this as a challenge from an identity perspective, but actually something that like is the greatest gift, it shifts the whole energy in the conversation. And this is the way I teach it in corporations, actually, when we do what's called high potential programs for talent at like a big bank. I might have a group of 35 LGBTQ leaders for 3 days in a room, and we can talk about all these things. We can talk about, you know, the gifts of being LGBTQ, and like people cry. I mean, they have never been in a room before with all LGBTQ people talking about their leadership journey, talking about what's important to them, feeling that they can relax for once, you know, and not have to be code switching and covering. And
There's so many things I want to talk about right now.
I know. I'll just stop right there.
No, well, let's start with the fact that, like, also, how different would it be to have the experience of doing a thing like for work in a room full of queer people?
That would be amazing. Yeah.
Like, what strikes me all the time is, like, how few of us actually have that experience. You know, it's like, I understand if you're working at, like, a small indie queer-owned business and, like, maybe you have a higher population of your coworkers who are also queer people, but, like, most of us, man, you're going into, like, a desk job, office job, like, whatever it is that you're doing, you're not going in and being surrounded by queer people all day.
Sadly.
In the way that so many of us are in our own lives, like
social
our
lives, or in every other part of our lives. Yeah.
And so there's, you know, I mean, I understand that, like, I think code switching, in the sense that it's usually used and in the way that it's, like, primarily for a lot of, like, minority groups, I think it's certainly something that queer people experience as well, of, like, you don't have the same conversations with a whole bunch of straight people at work that you do with, like, all your other gay friends at home, because, like, you can't.
Yes. I mean, I'm curious too, like, I feel like every time I'm in a room with, I'm the only gay person and everyone else.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And as we head into Thanksgiving time, I want to start by thanking my wife, Kelsey, who has not only listened to just about every episode of this podcast for 8 seasons now, but who also is the only reason I'm able to make time to record it every week. She takes the kids, gets them dinner, and gets them ready for bed, just so that Ellie and I can come on and yell about gay things into each other's faces for an hour. So here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people you're grateful for in your life, including yourself. I've been in therapy for a long time now, and one thing that's so important about therapy is how it teaches you to be more intentional. And being intentional about gratitude and how to show that to the people you appreciate is just one of the many benefits that I've gotten from therapy over the years. If you've been thinking of starting therapy, consider giving BetterHelp a try. I know how hard it can be to find time for regular therapy, and BetterHelp is designed to be flexible and convenient for your schedule. You can fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. If you want to start being more intentional about gratitude in your life, visit betterhelp.com/letshangout today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/letshangout.
Let's hang out.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. For many businesses, the holiday season can be both an exciting and stressful time. With so many balls in the air, one thing you definitely want to know you can rely on is how you're selling your products. And with Shopify, you can rest easy knowing it's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And when it comes to successful brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, an often overlooked secret is all the things that go on behind the scenes that make selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, if you take a peek behind that curtain, you'll see that Shopify is what makes it all possible. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, so that's more happy customers and way more sales going. It's true all the time, but especially this time of year, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use for Realm merch with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm. For many businesses, the holiday season can be both an exciting and stressful time. With so many balls in the air, one thing you definitely want to know you can rely on is how you're selling your products. And with Shopify, you can rest easy knowing it's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And when it comes to successful brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, an often overlooked secret is all the things that go on behind the scenes that make selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, if you take a peek behind that curtain, you'll see that Shopify is what makes it all possible. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, so that's more happy customers and way more sales going. It's true all the time, but especially this time of year, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use for Realm merch with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
Is not. You have so many of the same conversations, like, because all they want to do is like understand you, like, and understand like
We should come with like placard signs you could just read.
like what your world is like. Like, I'm just curious, like, what for you do you think are like the top things that people ask you to be like, how do I, as a straight cis person, like understand your life, your culture? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They just want to know, like, you know, language to use. I think it's like, what if I say the wrong thing? Like, they do want to know about pronouns, and like, I'm so happy as a cisgender identified person to come out as cisgender and make sure like I'm disclosing that, and then I get to educate people about it, and I encourage everybody that I'm ever on stage with to, we all share our pronouns, right? So anyway, I try to, I know what they're it's what they say and what they think maybe are two different things as well. Because when they find out I'm a member of the community, they're just flummoxed. You know, I just think people are, you know, there's stereotypes that are held that I might defy in terms of perhaps how I express my gender expression, I would say. And you know, I always, funny enough, I don't know if there's truth in it, because like when I was coming out, there were no gay women that I could see that really had the same gender expression that I had, you know? We used to use the word femme back then. Everybody thought I was the straight friend that was going out clubbing with, right?
I have that.
So
I have that as well.
Yeah,
That's not
sure.
generational.
That's not generational.
No.
So that still happens.
I understand you.
Yes, you and I, yes. There used to be something called FemCon or something. I never made it to the conference, but I was like,
oh my God,
what? There's enough of us for a conference? Really?
We did a whole episode on like style, presentation, like gender expression and everything.
That.
So Ellie is officially a blue jeans femme.
Oh, okay.
That's blue jeans femme. Okay. And then we made up mine, which is andro femboy.
Oh, I like that. I like that. You know what we did in the LGBT leadership program I was telling you about? It was mostly men. So this was a corporate environment, mostly men, and like just a smattering of women, right? Interesting, right? So that tells you a lot too about sort of who's out and who's not in workplaces.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a gendered thing going on. And then I had the women in the room come and line up in the front of the room, and I totally was breaking so many rules, but I think like the men in the room really wanted to understand gay women and felt like we were this alien species. So, you know what I mean? So we lined up, and we lined up as we identified from an expression perspective, like what we were comfortable with, from sort of feminine normative to masculine normative, and understand this is so imperfect and like language fails us and all of it. But I was on like the femme end, and then there was a woman next to me, and she said, well, I identify as femme aggressive. And so she and I look like we express similarly, but she identifies as very dominant. And then I'm more like, I'm pretty mellow. Like I'm a business owner, but I'm in many ways, I'm sort of a type B kind of, I'm a more mellow person. I don't need to be always dominant. I always need to be running everything. And so So we lined up, and we had the women in the middle identify as some kind of soft butch, what you just said, Lee, like some combination.
Andro femboys.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yep. And then it went down, and then we actually talked about our shoes, our hair. How do we feel comfortable presenting? I tried to be butch when I came out so that I would be seen in the community. Yeah, I know. It was ridiculous on me. Like, it was such a failure. It was not good. It was not
Did
me.
you buzz? Did you go full buzz? Just
no, I never went.
I
I didn't quite do that, but like, I just was like, see me as part of the community. Like, I was so tired of being stereotyped by my own community. And then it made me think that I was a sellout because I was comfortable expressing in a certain way. That was sort of more, I suppose, like fit the expectations of what a woman, woman needs to look like and dress like. And it was just very confusing. So, but in the lineup, then we talked about who we're attracted to. And so that was really interesting too.
Oh, that's fun.
So we separated. I know it was fun. So, I like this kind of woman, right? Like, I like women on the other end of the line. For me, from where I was standing, because that's true for me. I definitely, don't tend to have much interest. I mean, I've been with my partner for 20 years, but women that express like me, not really doing it for me.
You're not femme for femme, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that is very true. Thank you for giving me that. So anyway, it was just really fun, and the guys in the room were so excited to kind of understand our world because it's just, I don't know if you both agree. It's just so different.
It's very different.
Very different.
It is.
Yes.
It is really different.
You need an episode on that.
I'm so fascinated by like that whole thing because I'm like, that would be such a fun. Part of me wants to just like make my company do that with like the vast majority of straight people.
Yeah,
that we work
wouldn't that be
I'm
interesting?
like, this would be amazing.
It's so true.
And also because it's bringing up like another thing that I didn't even really think about at first. I'm like, I don't make any secret of like my life and my family and like who I am or whatever. But it's also like my coworkers, like they know if we're going to a customer or a conference or like any, it's a pretty low key office. Like we are jeans and a sweater or a shirt or whatever every day. But if you're like dressing up to go to a customer or dressing up to go somewhere, like they know I'm showing up in dress pants and a button down shirt and like my coworker that I work with primarily, like the guy who's like my counterpart, like we always joke because we happen to usually show up in like matching button downs and stuff and like like there's no secret about what I'm wearing and how I dress and how I hadn't even thought about that part of it, but God, that would be such a fun.
It was really because straight people have gender expression too, and
exactly
right.
Yeah.
It's like so we're all on a spectrum, which is part of what I teach all the time. Is that this identity is not a binary. Sexual orientation is not a binary, and gender identity is not a binary. So we're all, and even straight people are somewhere on this continuum, and so there's no us and them. So it's it leads to really interesting.
But I feel like they spend so much less time thinking about it or like being aware of it all the time.
Whereas
like
we are all constantly aware of our spectrum.
Constantly,
and constantly placing other people on our idea of it. Like,
it's
I bet it would be so interesting to do that.
It really is.
I also find it really interesting, like the gendered thing about it too. Why do you think that it's like gay men are more comfortable being out than queer women in the workplace?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. So we didn't talk earlier about intersectionality. So that's my answer to this, is that the more stigmatized identities you hold at once, the more stigmatized you are, the more covering you do or feel that you need to do. And then I think there's some diversities that we can't hide. So if I'm already the only woman in the room, am I also going to sort of, double down and come out, right? I'm already fighting to get a voice and be heard and seen in a male-dominated environment. And then I add being queer, right? Then you add being a woman of color, or you add being a trans woman or somebody who's gender fluid. So the complexities of who we are, it's like our audience can only handle like one thing at a time. Bless their hearts. So that's what we have to change, right? We have to be able to fully show up and about things we can hide. Ideally, we have workplaces where all of us will be embraced, that it won't shock people, that we have programs in place, that we normalize a conversation, whether it's about like mental health and mental illness, that's another intersectional identity too, that I think, we strive to not talk about, and yet so many are suffering from. But if you add that to being a queer woman of color, you're going to like overwhelm the system. People's processing just can't, and all the stereotypes that are kicked up because of our various identities, like we are constantly battling those microaggressions or macroaggressions, all the time. So to survive and to sort of minimize the noise, you might choose to not come out. And I think that's why women are closeted, because they're fighting so hard to just be women. And then you keep adding identity. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Does that sound like it's right?
Yes. I'm like, as a woman, yes.
As
that
a
makes
woman,
sense.
yes.
A lot of sense.
Yes, indeed.
I understand exactly what you're saying. For sure.
For sure.
I'm curious though, like what, from the perspective of comparing most work settings where you're going to go in and be the token queer person in that space, to going into a work setting where you're just like here are 35 other queer leaders, in whatever industry. Like what do you think was like the biggest standout for you of like that comparison?
Oh my gosh, it's safety, it's being able to breathe, it's letting your guard down, it's like having common language, and then you realize how hard you're working in your day-to-day life when you're not in that room. I think that the contrast becomes really clear, and you realize you're like the duck paddling furiously under the water, but like trying to look all serene on the top. It's really a lot of work. People say I'm exhausted every day, and it's sort of, I call it death by 1,000 cuts. It's all of the little ways that you feel excluded, and it's not purposely done. It is in the sort of casual day-to-day stuff that's the 1,000 cuts, 1,000 paper cuts, right? It's like it's not really the like bias right in your face these days. I mean, in some places it is, but it's really gone underground, and I think it continues to wear on us a lot. So yeah, that's what I would say.
How do we fight against that? Like, what's the solution for that?
Well, I work a lot with affinity groups. So in the corporate world, and in any large organization, nonprofits too, there are LGBTQ plus groups, right? There are thousands of people in these communities within an employer. And if there's not one, you should start one at your job. Really important. And if you have enough people, maybe your group is going to be full of allies to start, because you may not have a lot of, or maybe you have a multicultural group to start and you have all kinds of diverse identities in it, right? But the point is to have critical mass. The point is to realize you're never alone, that lots of people, whatever identity they hold, they're the duck paddling furiously. And so there's a commonality across your experiences that you can really strategize around and feel community around, and talk about like, what do I do when I hear my colleagues say this? What's my response? And brainstorm and, just be strategic, I think, about our own self-care, because that isolation can really take its toll on us. And if you're a company or you're in a place in the world where this just isn't possible, find your online communities, find industry groups that are dedicated to LGBTQ stuff, LGBTQ law, doctors, journalists, everything. Like, depending on what you do, there's always a trade association. I'm in the gay-owned business community, the NGLCC, and I love that group. And I just love being in community and talking about our challenges as business owners through an LGBTQ lens. And it's not always about being gay business owners, but it's just a wonderful conversation.
I love that because we have all this online stuff, you actually can find that now. I think about a lot of the time, like before the podcast, but I was out and like I had a good group of gay friends, but I also would have like a group of straight friends, which I still have. But it's like when you're that one person in this group of a bunch of other straight people, there tends to be like Lee was saying before, like a tokenization and othering that happens. And I don't know, this is like just something I think about a lot, where it's like there's something, I feel like my straight friends don't understand why I feel more comfortable with all my gay friends, right? And they're like, but like, we're your friends, like come hang out with us.
That's so true.
But like, is there...
It's cute straight people.
I'm like, is there a way to reconcile that like tokenization, that othering, with also like loving these people and feeling like a part of the group? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's hard. It's weird. You feel like you're on an island.
Oh, that's such a good word for it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the best efforts they need to be appreciated by us, right? It's probably never gonna, I guess, feel as good as being seen and heard in a community of our own. don't forget, by the way, that some of us really don't feel seen and heard by the gay community either, right?
Yeah.
And so, talk about complex. I think there's tremendous, the gay community has its own diversity issues, like we've kind of been alluding to. Racism, sexism, transphobia, socioeconomic, ignoring sort of the most vulnerable in our community, fighting for rights and privileges that benefit the most privileged in the community. So there's just so much, I call it the diversity within the diversity. It's our dirty laundry as a community too. So it's something to not all, just because we might feel more comfortable doesn't mean everybody does. And then you're really an island, right? Because you're sort of in the middle. You're like, well, where do I fit in? Neither group really makes sense. I mean, it's like a lot of like biracial people describe their experience, right? No, they're not Black enough. They're not white enough. Like they're just,
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's an answer per se, but it's just good to be aware that you're feeling that and that it's real. And, I suppose to make sure that you have your community where you can actually relax. Like in some part of your life, you have to be able to just be seen and heard and not have to work so hard at it. And that's what I would wish for everybody, is to have that. And, an ally friendship, a friendship with an ally can be like deeply restorative. I mean, I always say straight allies, like, just move me in a really amazing way. And so amongst those straight colleagues, I think also our goal should be to really, really build a strong relationship with somebody that has our back no matter what, that doesn't identify as we do, but like that's kind of the point, somebody who's really just in it with us, ride or die. Like we say the word accomplice now, so it kind of goes to a different level from ally. It's like, I'm in your getaway car and like I'm at the wheel. You come here anytime and like we're out of here. Like, or I'm going to have your back, or I'm going to fight for stuff so that you don't have to, or I'm going to say something so that you don't always have to be the one like putting yourself in harm's way career-wise, if somebody says something, that kind of stuff to me is enormous. Like when somebody does that, it's hugely significant. And so I just would say, there are allies that are waiting, I think, to be encouraged and kind of ignited, like all around us. And I remember one of my favorite allies said, I never knew I was doing anything that was helpful. And then somebody from the community said to me, you're an ally, and I want to thank you for just doing what you did or saying what you said. And she said, what does that even mean? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And then she was like, oh, I can do more of that. Oh, okay, that's making a difference. Okay, let me do more of that. And like since then, it's been this like intentional road that she's been on to be like a better and better and better straight ally. And like that is like breathtaking to me. It's beautiful.
And sometimes it's such small things too, where it's like I have one really good friend at work where same thing. I mean, she has been more than happy to like listen to me come in and just talk about like stupid gay shit all the time and stuff that like the thing that I think about when you go into work and you're working with like primarily straight people, the thing that's hard sometimes is like they don't even know the stuff that they don't know that makes you feel out of place, right? Because they've never experienced it. They've never had to justify some of the conversations that you end up having to justify. And so even just, like going in and like talking through, like she was one of the people when we were planning starting the podcast, and I would go in and like, like bounce ideas about like, we're talking about doing this and we're going to be doing this and it's so cool. And she was like, why? And not in like a bad way, but in like a genuinely curious way. Like, why would you, like, why would people want to listen to like that? Is that a thing? Do people do that? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Let me tell you all about it. But even like what that turns into is just something so simple as like, I know like we've had situations where we're at work dinners together where like, someone like a coworker or a manager or a boss or something, like someone will just make some comment that I'm just like, oh my God, like, did you really just say that out loud in a room like full of people that work with you? And like just sometimes having someone that like when you look over and she's just pointedly making eye contact with me being like, I know how that I know how that hits you, and I know you're probably really frustrated right now and trying not to say something, and I'm just like, oh my God, it's like such a small thing, but like when you don't have that other queer person in the room that is going to be there for you to like have that moment of like, wow, straight obliviousness, that sometimes you just need someone who's like, I have heard you talk about this enough that like I know and I'm here. Yes. And like that can be that's huge. It just makes such a big difference, because those are the times when you don't have that I think you feel the most out of place, where you're just like, am I the only person experiencing like this deep discomfort with what just happened right now? Like, did no one else, that didn't even hit anyone, like it just nothing registered, you know? And it's like, I feel like we have that happen a lot. It happens a lot, you know? Like, whether they mean to or not, it's just people say oblivious stuff sometimes when they're not aware, or when they're not, you know, they don't realize things that they're not educated on, or not
right.
like,
and then
conscious
you have
of,
to do the what we call emotional labor, right? You got to like teach, and then you got to explain, and then educate, and whatever. And so it's tiring. I mean, this is what I think leads to burnout, because we're always in this teaching role, because we're tokenized, because we're the only, you know, if we don't say anything, then no one's going to say anything, and then nobody will learn. And so it kind of leaves you in this place of, well, if I don't say something, then the learning's not going to happen. And it's just they're gonna proceed on, and they're gonna say it again and cause more harm. So then you're in this predicament of always being the squeaky wheel.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah. Okay. And some people love being the squeaky wheel.
Lee's like, I like being the squeaky wheel.
I squeak so good.
Yeah.
You are a good squeaker.
A charming squeaker. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, but it can be really, you know, you can be penalized for always being the squeaky wheel. Remember, like, the research I read is like, you remind people about your diversity all the time by being the squeaky wheel, by being the person that's like, oh, there she goes again. You know, that can actually harm us in terms of how we're viewed as, say, professional, in quotes, right? Or troublemaker, or angry, or, you know. And by the way, we're not the only community that's having this exact same conversation. People of color are all talking about this all the time, I can promise you. It's across the board. It's basically being had by anybody. So in a room you're in, you're never the only one that's being offended. I think we could probably safely say that, right? And so that's why I think where I've come to is we all need to have each other's backs. Like we really need to know enough about the microaggressions that impact all of us and all of our diversities. And we need to be looking out for each other and sort of shouldering the load. And so if you've got a boss who's quasi-racist, but not very often homophobic, maybe there's a way you can be an ally.
Are you saying there are some of them out there? I find that hard to imagine.
Right? I know. I don't. Maybe that was a bad example, but you know.
No, I bet there's a lot of people nodding along right now.
Nodding along. So anyway, you're never alone, but I think, you know, and some of us we're not very good at confronting things. You know, there's a real difference between introverts and extroverts, and people who love conflict and people who avoid conflict. And, you know, I think too, being allies to each other, like you, Lee, maybe if you were my friend and you were like, Jen, I don't like the way that person talked to you in that meeting, or that guy stole your idea. You know, you could say, instead of me, if I'm conflict averse, you could be like, hey, wait a second, like that was Jennifer's idea, and I really want to hear more from her. Like, I want to say that was a great idea, and let me build on that, right? So refocusing the conversation, like it's like the women in Obama's cabinet that like decided that they were gonna shift how they supported each other because they just weren't being heard. Yeah. And they made a plan, and they went in and they changed, you know, body language, eye contact, referencing each other, calling each other by name, echoing people's points, like totally taking control. And that's my kind of fantasy, that we don't.
If you haven't noticed yet, that would be my role in that situation.
Of course it would. I know. I can tell.
That would be me.
Yeah, I can really tell. You'd be my mouthpiece for sure.
I am not a soft-spoken person, you know? My take on the straight people I work with is, if you didn't want to listen to me talk about how Hustlers was really gay, then you should have hired someone else. That's
I haven't
on
seen
you
that
guys.
movie yet, but I believe you.
It's
super gay?
you should watch it. There's no excuse. You're under quarantine. It's, you know.
Okay.
Take 2 hours.
Okay.
Definitely worth it.
It's a good time. And then you can listen to our Should Have Been Gay on it, because it's the gayest movie ever.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
The gayest movie made this year.
Can we are you all fans of Gentleman Jack, by the way, to take a side
yes.
step?
Yes.
Do you know,
Yes.
my partner and I were supposed to be on a plane this coming week to go to Halifax. For the birthday weekend. Yes.
That is the most
birthday
disappointing
weekend.
thing.
Yes. And Sistrel Home, my partner was going to drag me to all the talks by all the historians, all the people who decoded the diaries. All, you know, I'm sure people were going to be dressed up. I'm sure it was going to be like a total.
You'll get there. Right? You'll get there. And it will be that much
think so.
sooner.
I know,
I
right?
think so.
Except, can I tell you, I love Ann Lister even more now. I was listening to a podcast that it's called Very Gay, Very Ladylike, and they're like all about Ann Lister and Gentleman Jack. But the one that I listened to, like one of their first ones, they mentioned how she was like 5'2".
Really?
Yeah, which Saran Jones obviously is not.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, I love her even more now.
Oh my God, she's that strong and she's short.
Because
she's just
yeah,
like
she's
me.
like me. I'm 5'2", and I'm like, I'm trying to imagine me doing all of the shit that she does.
She was such a badass. Oh my gosh,
Right?
I love that.
I have like a whole new level of respect
That's
for
awesome.
Ann Lister. So that's so disappointing. I would say I'm jealous, but we'll be jealous when you reschedule it.
Okay,
How's
and
that?
maybe you all will come. That would be really fun.
Yes. Oh my
Yes,
God.
I know. Now that it's rescheduled, we'll have to
you
change
definitely
our
will.
schedules.
You definitely
Oh yeah,
will.
we'll just crash your trip.
Totally,
That's fine.
totally. I got my Airbnb in Halifax.
As we're talking about Ann Lister, I'm like, this is a good segue. Honestly, it's time, I think.
Is it
Lee.
time?
It's time.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna move us into this is our last segment.
Okay.
We're gonna do some Q and Gays.
Q and
Q and gay.
Q and gay.
So Q and Gays, they're either yes or no or multiple choice questions that we will ask you, Jennifer, based on our conversation. We also then put them up on our Twitter so that our listeners can answer.
Awesome.
So starting with question 1, have you ever been the only LGBTQ plus person in the room?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Hello.
Obviously. Question 2. What part of queer life do you find yourself educating your colleagues on the most? A, queer shows, B, queer dating, C, queer celebrities, or D, queer events?
Oh, I'd say probably D, queer events. Yes, for sure.
What types of events? Like your Ann Lister weekend?
I know, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like Pride. I mean, I'm involved with so many corporate gay groups, and they're all about events. I mean, we laugh and we say it's food, fun, and famous people and flags. Like it's like a constant.
Oh my God.
Like cultural celebrations and Pride stuff. And so I think I'm probably. I think that's a way straight people learn. Events are fun. They're celebrations. I mean, they're great times to get to know the community when the community is celebrating, and when allies are very welcome too, I think. So also dinners, fundraisers for all the advocacy nonprofits. Like I'm constantly at, like the HRC dinner, and people bring their straight friends or their head of HR or their CEO. And it's just like, it just blows people's minds to be in those rooms. And I've seen just how transformative it is and so fun, and like ends up being like their favorite thing ever. And they can't wait to go. And so
they're like, this is what gay people are like all the time.
All the time. They're so witty
And we're like,
and
yes.
fun.
Yeah.
They clean up nice.
Exactly.
We know how to party.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Question 3, does your company have an LGBTQ group?
Well, I'm a self-employed person with a team. So funny enough, I'm actually, there's only a few LGBTQ people on my largely straight cisgender team, actually. So, yeah, so that's been, I don't know.
You should start a group.
I know, right? We help those groups. Like, that's what we
There you
build. I literally, when I started my business 10 years ago, the first clients I had were LGBT groups that needed a speaker or that wanted to sit down with me to build their strategy. So I literally, like, that was how I cut my teeth on what I do now, was making sure that they weren't just food, fun, and famous people, right? That they weren't just Pride once a year, but that they were actually positioning themselves to be business partners, meaning we can help you attract LGBT talent. We can help the brand. We can help guide marketing and product development. We can help inform sales. We're sort of the intel inside for any sort of institution. So we actually have helped build 1 million of those, and not just LGBT groups, but women's groups and all ethnicity-based groups and veterans and generations and like all the diversity networks. We are kind of very well known for that. So it's been a real education and a privilege to see how those have grown to like have thousands of people in them and having like massive org charts and global structures and like executive, buy-in, and like it's just really cool to see how they've grown.
Executive gays.
Yeah, some executive gays when we're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Many times it's a straight ally executive sponsor, but we'll take it.
Still, we'll
they
get
need
there.
to learn too.
Baby steps.
Question number 4. How much of your full self do you bring to work? A, 25%, B, 50%, C, 75%, or D, 100%?
I would say D. But interesting, I want to point out that I'm not just my LGBTQ identity. So when you say how much do you bring of yourself to work, I think there's other, for example, I don't even know. I'm not a very operations-minded person. So it's something that I feel like insecure about, given that I'm leading a company. Like, so there's things that I'm very uncomfortable about doing that I need to do in my role that I know that I'm not good at. And so there's certain twisting that I do around to compensate. Or I used to hide that I was an artist and an opera singer for years.
Were you ashamed of your opera singing
I just didn't think.
Oh my God, we would have you singing for us every day.
Right, well, that's the problem. They have you sing and they think you're entertainment, and they don't think you're smart or whatever they don't think. And I'm like, that's not okay. So I hid that for a long time. Anyway, so when you ask that question like that, I would say it's been a struggle to bring my full self all along. I think stylistically, personality-wise, a lot of respects for me.
Okay, well, you come work here and we'll make like a hot female trio singing group and it'll be great.
Awesome.
I'm down.
Sweet. Question 5. Would you prefer a boss who A, looks like you, B, talks like you, C, acts like you, or D, is nothing like you?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I love that question. I would say C is act like, or maybe B and C hybrid, I would say. Like, just, gosh, that makes life so much easier. I'm so extroverted. I'm a total feeler. So I can imagine that boss and I just vibing and sort of intuitively understanding each other maybe and understand and appreciating each other. But there is beauty in difference. And I actually am also a huge fan of the complementary, and all the magic that's created when you really complement each other and you're not clones. So I don't know. I'd have to think. I could argue that one a lot of different ways. That's a really good question. What do people say?
You can only pick one. It's one letter.
What do people say mostly?
We'll see. We'll see when we put it up.
Okay, cool.
We'll see what people think.
Oh, yeah. It goes up the week the episode goes up. So we don't know yet.
Oh, my gosh. I want to hear
find
that.
out.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Remember, you can also give us your own answers to this episode's Q&A questions on our Twitter at Let's Hang Out Pod. Jennifer, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Oh my gosh, so
this
fun.
Has been such a blast. Where
you.
can our listeners find you on social media, your website, all that good stuff?
All that good stuff. So let's go through the litany of social media. Jennifer Browm Consulting .com is our website. I have a personal website that's more my speaker, author, podcaster website, which is Jennifer Browm Speaks. So you could kind of visit both and get a sense of sort of the two work streams that I focus on. Jennifer Browm Consulting on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm at Jennifer Browm on Twitter. Yes, I've been on a long time. I don't know how I got that handle. But I do love Twitter. I learned so much about diversity on Twitter. It's excellent and sometimes really hard, but really good.
It's such a good place to follow people.
It is. And there's so much really good dialogue and people being honest. And particularly for allyship, I think it's critical to be a witness to the conversations that are going on in community and be kind of a fly on the wall. It's something that is so rare and yet really important. In Instagram, I'm at Jennifer Browm Speaks. And I have a podcast, as you said before, called The Will to Change, True Stories of Diversity and Inclusion. So you can find that on various platforms. And then lastly, I have 2 books. One is called Inclusion, my first in 2017, and then How to Be an Inclusive Leader, which came out last fall. And there's an assessment in the book. There's a model you can apply. It's a good, quick read. And it's a great pass-along book for those lovely, aspiring allies who are kind of clueless. It's kind of who I wrote it for. I'm like,
buy it as a present for some friends.
Here's some you might want to read this, like before you say the wrong thing again.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And we will have all of those links up on our website as well for anyone who wants to find them. Jennifer will also be doing an Instagram story takeover this week, so make sure you send in your questions, log onto our Instagram, let her know what you want to know. I already have so many more questions, so I'll be half the questions on our Instagram story takeover. Awesome. But we hope we see you there. Jennifer, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This has been a delight.
Was great.
Oh, I'm so glad. I feel so warm and in community with you both. Thank you so much for having me.
Let me hear you say hip, 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 well, yeah.
We love hearing from you and building our community, so we want to shout out some of our favorite things each episode. I would like to give a huge shout out, number one, to everyone who came to our Winona Earp trivia night. We had an absolute blast. Earpers are some of the most generous people ever. We had most of our winners donate their winnings back, and I just want to say thank you. You're all wonderful. But the more important thing that I want to talk about is the potatoes who came to Winona Earp trivia night. So
our favorite potatoes. We had a team from France who all showed up as potatoes on their green screens. At midnight, their local time.
Yes. So number one, dedication. Number two, creativity. Number three, joy.
It was beautiful.
It was so beautiful. I'd like to give a personal shout out to Elodie, who after Winona Earp trivia night binged our whole show in about 2 or 3 days, listened to like 15 episodes, became a patron, is now hanging out with us at our next patron hangout. And I just know that this little potato is going to be one of my favorite new patrons.
This is what we live for. Let's just put it that way. This is like our favorite thing. So we want to shout out all the potatoes, and especially you, Elodie. We're so happy. We're so happy to have you in our crew now. It's great.
Yes.
I also want to shout out a user on Twitter, Shields, who messaged us to say how much joy the podcast brings them. They said they were out on a walk listening to one of our recent episodes. And it's just, it seems like a silly small thing, but literally those messages I just smiled so big for like the next hour, because it just makes us really happy to know that we help brighten people's days. So thank you, Shields, for reaching out. It meant a lot for us to hear it.
We'd also like to thank our Lesbian Jesus patrons, Tanya Ferguson,
Jess Klaus,
Danny Griswold,
Sarah and Julia,
Carrie Ann Lawrence,
Mark Foster,
Danny Gunlock Tamora,
Audrey O'Connor,
Alana Rosen,
Kayla Kelly, and Tara Gleason.
And we would like to thank our King Princess patrons, Lizette Stye, Leah Henley,
and Amy and Ellen.
And our sponsorship patron, Wendy K. Bartlett, who would like to remind you all to support your local arts, especially during this time. Thank you for always helping us out, Wendy. Remember, you can also find us on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Let's Hang Out Pod.
You can email us at letshangoutpod@gmail.com.
Make sure you check out our website at letshangoutpod.com.
In whatever app you use to listen to podcasts, make sure that you subscribe, and that way you'll get new episodes as soon as they go up.
We're also posting videos on our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe at youtube.com/letshangoutpod to catch them.
If you want to help support the podcast, there are so many different ways that you can do that. The first, it's free, it's easy. Go on the Apple Podcast app and leave us a rating and a review. A, we love reading them, and B, it helps other people find the podcast.
I've seen some new reviews up on there too, so thank you to everyone who has been rating and reviewing us. If you want to support us financially, you can do that at bit.ly/lespatreon. We have all kinds of cool perks. We have patron-only Discord. We are having a lot of hangouts. We just had last week a really awesome hangout with some of our patrons on Zoom. So we're trying to build as much community as we can for our patrons, and we hope to see more of you there.
The other way that you could support us, you can find our store at bit.ly/lesshop, and you can load up on some sweet, sweet swag. Get your shirts, get your tanks, get your mugs, all the stuff that you need to, look super gay on a nice fancy Zoom call.
Pride is upon us. It is coming.
Yes.
And like I said, we will not let Pride die. So get your Pride merch. bit.ly/lesshop.
It's going to be virtual Pride this year, y'all.
Virtual Pride. So you can wear a different shirt every day of the whole June. You're not spending any money going out or flying to New York for Pride. So buy all our merch.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. If you want to find us individually, you can find me at Ellie Brigida on Instagram and Twitter.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at LSH Foster.
With that, I'm Ellie.
And I'm Lee.
And let's hang out again soon.
Let's hang out.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What are you doing?
What do you mean?
Just keep it simple.
I'm making the promo.
Just keep it simple. Just say, hey, we're the Brav Bros. Two guys that talk about Bravo.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're the Brav Bros.
No.
Oh.
Dude, stop with the voice. Just keep it simple.
I've seen promos on TV, dude. This is how you get the fans engaged. This is how you get listeners. We're trying to get listeners here. If we just say, oh, we're two dudes that talk about Bravo, people are going to get tired of it already. We need some oomph.
All right, then fine. Let's try to do it with your voice.
Brav Bros.
Good job.